Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and today I want to show you some things that I've been thinking about Christmas and what kind of gifts to get for people. And I think that in my side of thinking in the vintage cars and getting people to know vintage and to learn about vintage, I thought there's a couple of ideas that I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to show you one thing, and I'll show you this book, but I'll show you the book more in detail in a little bit. I think this is a good book to start with. It's Baseball, An Illustrated History by Jeffrey Ward and Ken Burns. And Ken Burns did the movie, the baseball movie with the different innings. And if you haven't seen that, you should see it. And I'm going to go over the book a little bit, but I think that something like this would be of interest to somebody that maybe even has recently started collecting, but hasn't gotten too much into the vintage, because the vintage really is about the history of the game, and you've got to really like the history and learn about the players of that era, so you can kind of say, hey, I want to look into those, and either a player or a team or an era or whatever, But it's one way of getting to know baseball, getting to know history, and getting to know, just the players. So, and another thing that I thought of is, they used to make cheap sets back in the days, like this Donruss Hall of Fame Heroes set. And, these are cheap. You could probably pick them up on eBay or things like that. And this is the whole set, and I just want to show you the set because this is something else that would be a good gift for Christmas to maybe somebody that doesn't want to go through reading books and things like that, but wants to know a little bit more about the players back in those days and who they were. And this is the Hall of Fame Hero series by Donruss. I think it's 1983. There goes Ty Cobb. See, you could drop this one and it doesn't matter. This Ty Cobb is not going to get dinged. See if I can get the date on that there. I don't know why it's not focusing too much on that. But anyway, it's a 1983 Donruss, and it talks about the player. You see, baseball's greatest player, the game's finest competitor. I'm outside today, relaxing. There's a helicopter flying by here. But anyway, it talks about the players. So it's a good way for someone to really get familiar with these old-time Hall of Fame players, learn about them. And, there's Walter Johnson here. There's Walter Johnson. Here's Christy Mathewson. Because really, that's the first time. I mean, you may want to start with cards like this, and say, hey, I would like to have a playing days card of Christy Mathewson. John McGraw and Connie Mack called him the greatest pitcher they had ever seen. Christy Mathewson won 20 games as a 21-year-old New York Giants rookie in 1901. So these are things that, you would love to read about and know about. Josh Gibson, people don't know who Josh Gibson is or was. And, he was the Babe Ruth of the Negro Leagues. And there it is right there, Josh Gibson, known as the Babe Ruth of the Negro Leagues, next to Satchel Paige, a barrel-chested catcher, generated tremendous batting power with little apparent effort. These are the things that could get you into some vintage. Learn about these players. Here's Honus Wagner, and it talks about Honus Wagner. So it's a good way to just read about these players, read about these guys. These are all the top players. This is a little set from Donruss. It's very inexpensive. You can probably buy a few on eBay, give them away to people you think would be interested in reading about this, or get them for yourself. Guys, these are really nice little cards. Like I said, they're not expensive, but it talks about it. See, it talks about the players. It kind of gets you to learn about all these guys. And maybe, here's Mickey Mantle. And there are Mantle collectors. This is probably part of the Mantle collection. Of course, these are all way past their playing days, but it would still tells you about each of the players. And if you're interested in collecting them further, then you could say, hey, you know, I like the Mantle. I want to get a playing days card of Mantle. Or some of them are not expensive. Luke Appling, you know, and some, you know, are the greatest hitter that ever lived, Ted Williams. So these are just, there's a lot of sets like this out there that you can look at. This is just one of my favorites because you can just play with them and handle them and look at them and touch them and read them. And that's the main thing. The key to this is give them to somebody that's going to read about these guys, even if it's just yourself. You know, here's Satchel Paige. These are nice cards. Talks about the players. It's got all Hall of Famers at that time. Satchel Paige was a legend in the Negro Leagues. You know, thrilling fans with his famous hesitation pitch. Yeah, he would trick everybody with that. There's Lou Bordeaux. All really top-notch Hall of Famers are all in this little Donruss Hall of Fame hero set. There's Jimmy Fox, Double X. People don't realize how good Jimmy Fox was. And these are good pictures of these players, good drawings. There's Duke Snider. So I'm going to go through and show you these guys. Monty Irvin. A nice relaxing day today on a Sunday. Got football coming up now. But there's Hank Greenberg. Figured I'd take a look at some cards. Here's the great Roberto Clemente, the greatest Hispanic player in the history of baseball. And I was looking, I had these in a little box, and in that little box, I also saw this. So this will give you a little extra Clemente. It's a puzzle, a Clemente puzzle. I had a few of these in that little box that this set was in. So I'm assuming they were probably almost the same year. So there's the Clemente as a little bonus for all of my Clemente collectors. There's Al Kaline, one of the greatest, most underrated black players in history is Frank Robinson. First black manager, won MVP in 2 leagues. Incredible player. Joe Cronin. All of these Hall of Famers have tremendous history. Burley Grimes. And some aren't expensive. Here's the Wainer brothers. These guys were all good players at the time. Here's the Wainer brothers. They start together in Pittsburgh outfield from 1927 to 1940. Little guys. Lloyd Little Poison and Paul Big Poison were career 300 hitters. Lloyd hit 355 as a rookie. Imagine this guy today. He'd be one of the hottest prospects. He's hitting 355 as a rookie. Here's one of the most greatest and most underrated pitchers ever, Grover Cleveland Alexander. Grover Alexander. An incredible pitcher in his days. Very, very underrated. Over 2 decades, Grover Cleveland hurled the National League 90 shutouts. A total topped only by Walter Johnson. He won 373 games. Wow. Underrated for sure. And here's another one of these underrated players, Yogi Berra. If you talk to people on the Yankees, managers, coaches during that time, they say that Yogi was the heart of the team. It wasn't really Mickey, it was Yogi. Yogi ran the team, managed the pitchers, managed Whitey Ford, took care of the guys. Yogi was won 10 World Series championship, more than anybody. I think it's the most in history. 10 championships. He was kind of like the Bill Russell of baseball. Yogi Berra, the Yankees' great catcher, played on 14 pennant winners. There it is. And 10 World Series champions, more than any other player. Yeah, I was correct. I've read these cards before. I just remembered that. So this is my little card, and this is, one way that I got started. I picked this thing up and I read these cards and I looked through them, and it got me interested in the old timers like James Bell. That's cool, Papa Bell. And they were just got me back into the vintage, but not just vintage, even the deeper vintage, you know, the 1800s vintage. Here's Bill Dickey. Here's the great Cy Young. More wins than anybody in history, over 500. And I'm sure it says that in the back. The greatness, yeah. 511 wins. 100 more than than the number recorded by any other pitcher. 20-game winner more than 16 times, 14 times in a row. Incredible player. So, you know, you may gift these cards or set this set of cards to somebody, and they may look at it and say, you know what, I'd love to have a Cy Young playing days card. And that got me started into it, so maybe it'll get somebody else started into it. So just look at the little gifts and things that you can do, or get for yourself. If you don't know these guys, there's Charlie Gehringer. Charlie Gehringer has one of the most beautiful autographs of anybody I've ever seen. Almost like a John Hancock style. There's Dizzy Dean, another player that was a great player, Dizzy Dean. There's Bob Lemon. These are all good Hall of Famers. Some you may not have heard of. Some are not the greatest players, like Red Ruffing, but they were big-time Hall of Famers during their days. There's Stan the Man Musial, again, one of the greatest hitters. And the good thing about these cards is they put them in the uniforms of the team they played most. Well, the old guys usually didn't switch too much, but the new guys did. So it's a Hall of Fame hero, so it's a Hall of Fame uniform they wear. That's Carl Hubble. There's the great Hank Aaron with the Braves. And he talks about Hank here. Synonymous home runs. 755, it's the all-time mark. Of course, this was an 83, way before Bonds and stuff. But, you know, these are really great cards. Here's one of the best managers ever in the history of baseball, John McGraw. Read up about these guys. Very interesting. Here's Bob Feller. Bob Feller can just throw heat. I did a video on Bob Feller. You should go back and read about it. He was just awesome, awesome. That kid came on, 17 years old. Struck out 18 in one game. Here's Casey Stengel, the other top manager here in this little set of cards. Then you got Ralph Kiner. Some people didn't realize Ralph Kiner was a huge home run hitter back in the 50s. Then you got one of the greatest catchers ever coming up is Roy Campanella. A great shot of Roy Campanella. Like Adam of Vintage Sanctuary says, look at the sky in the background of the stadium. Just a beautiful card. I'll give that an 11. Gorgeous card. So a lot of these are really nice. If you don't, have this set, get it for yourself or get something similar. Just learn about the history of these guys. Robin Roberts. Learn about these guys. And I guarantee you, once you know these players, you're going to want to say, hey, I'm going to collect some of these guys. Early win. And then at the end, it's just this has a Mickey Mantle. It's like a puzzle card. And it talks about it here. And then this is the checklist. So it's a nice little set. It's got everybody like from Ty Cobb, all of that. It doesn't have some of the guys that I collect, it's like from the 1800s, the Cap Ansings, the Keen Kellys, the players like that, Tim Keefe. But it's got from the 1900s on. But it's a great little set. So I encourage you guys to, learn about the history of baseball. And this book is awesome for that. It's got from the beginning of baseball all the way through history of baseball. It's a great book, a lot of pictures. There's the Babe, there's Jackie, And it goes through, there's a young Ted. If you don't have this book, you got to get it. Anybody that's a baseball fan needs to know. This is the beginning where it starts, and it talks about the whole history of baseball. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but here's chapter 1. That's how it started. You know, just back in the heydays. 1839 was the first game in Cooperstown. It says it there, 1839 in Cooperstown. As Abner Doubleday. So you guys got to read this history. And I guarantee you, once you get into this history, you'll begin to get into the 19th century stuff, which is really some of the most interesting collectible stuff ever. Look at the women they played. You know, I mean, it's pretty neat. Talks about Henry Chadwick. Talks about all these guys that were the first. They had women's leagues. You know, so it's a very interesting book. It goes on from all the way through. So I'm not going to go through it. That's when the team went to play at the Great Pyramid. It was just around 1900, 1889, I think 1889. And it's got, of course, the cards. You know, my favorite card. It's got the Cap Anson. There's the King Kelly and Roger Connor and Billy Sunday. All incredible cards, incredible players. The Gallery of Heroes. So it's if you really want to get into the history, it talks about the old days. They had the Negro leagues, and actually there were some black players that played back in the beginning with some of these teams, like Moses Fleetwood. Technically, he was the first black player, one of the first black players to play. Here he is right here. The 1887 Buffalo Bisons. So there were some black players that did play back then, but then they were banned after that. So, but this is such an interesting history of all of baseball. You know, it's really goes back and talks about everything, how it started, all the players, and it goes forward to you know, the Negro Leagues. And then it goes to, of course, Honus Wagner, Ty Cobb, and moves on, you know, just to the 20s and the Babe, and really just a lot of cool stuff in this book. There's the Babe. It's got letters from different players. A lot of collectible stuff in here too. You know, of course, the Babe, the big son of a bitch. He was just, he dominated. He just controlled the whole game. You know, when entire teams were hitting 20 home runs, he was hitting 50. So he was just, he was it. I mean, everything was the Babe. So it talks about the Babe era, and it really talks about all of baseball. It even talks about some of the House of David team, Barnstorving team, that were just everybody had teams back in the days, and then it just goes on. So I just wanted to show you this and show you a few of the pictures, a few cards of things that could get people, could get your friends, could get collectors to look at vintage. Because to me, it's just one of the most interesting aspects of the hobby. And I think that once you begin to learn about these players, you're going to want to say, hey, you know what? I'd like to maybe get a card of some of these guys, like the Jackie Robinsons or anything like that. So anyway, guys, the video's getting a little long. I'm going to go ahead and just end it right here and wish everybody a happy Sunday, and just encourage you to learn about the history of baseball. And like Pepino Man says, keep collecting. Okay? Love the hobby forever. So anyway, guys, have an awesome day. Have an incredible day. Just out here relaxing on a Sunday, getting ready for the football. So everybody have an awesome day. This is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. And listen, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to work on trying to get to 1,000. I didn't realize I was getting over 900 subscribers. So I'd like to get to 1,000, and then I'm going to do my first contest ever at that time, and maybe show my top 100 cards. I think that's going to be my goal. showing my top 100 cards by the end of the year. So everyone, please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. It's Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Have an awesome day.